One of the very worst feelings to have when you're in school is to feel like you're starting to fall behind. I remember sometimes I would be really eager in the first units of a class, say math, and I would be doing just fine. And then I would start doodling on my books and whatnot and chatting and not really paying attention. And before long, I would feel like I am so far behind that I don't think I can gain this ground. And that's the worst feeling to have in a book. And that's the feeling that I think a lot of people have when they read Malazan. I personally am on the 4th book, but I have had that feeling a few times where I thought, I wonder if I'm so far behind that I'm not going to be able to recover. Now, I feel that way sometimes when I read Shakespeare. There's just something about the writing that and the language that it's just a barrier for me. I sometimes feel that way with like a Dostoevsky, or recently with Blindsight, a sci-fi book. If it goes too far into sci-fi, sometimes I feel that I just kind of am left in the dust. And it's a terrible feeling. I've often just left a book behind when I thought, I can't gain this ground. Now, I want to talk to the people who feel that way in Malazan, especially in the first couple books. The short answer is, I guess, that you are in good company and to just push through. But sometimes that's a really annoying thing to hear. But I want to just kind of explain a couple things and give a couple resources that might be helpful. Now, where I'm from, I live up in Canada. And I'm right by the Rocky Mountains, on the west side of the Rocky Mountains. And there's this kind of iconic mountain. And it's actually on the U.S. side, but you see it from the Canadian side really clearly. And it's called Chief Mountain. Now, Chief Mountain, I've climbed it a couple times. And what you can see is there's this flat side. I guess if you were a rock climber, you could do that. But for someone who's not a rock climber, and the majority of people will go around the one side, and on the back side of it is this huge shale slope. And anyone who has climbed this mountain knows that it is 3 steps forward, and then you slide 2 steps back, basically the whole way up the mountain. And it can be super discouraging for a lot of people who feel like they are sliding back further than they are making progress. So as you are looking down at all these people and looking up, trying to not catch any falling rock as you go up, you see all these people just struggling to get up in their own sort of way. But when you are climbing this mountain, you are always focusing on this little point that you have to get to. That's the little chute that you have to go up, and then it helps you get to the very summit of Chief Mountain. Now, reading Malazan sometimes feels that way. I know for me, I was doing really good for the first 50 pages of Gardens of the Moon, and then I flipped this one page somewhere, and I thought, I don't understand what's going on. All of a sudden, I don't understand the magic system. What are these warrens? I didn't understand the big picture of what was happening and the major players. I didn't understand who was the good guy or who was the bad guy or who I should root for. Now, if you feel like you are in that same boat or were in that same boat, that's fine. And you are in good company. It will just take some time for all the information to kind of come forward. He kind of writes in this cyclical way where he will give you some points along the way and he'll give you that red circle to shoot for, but then he'll kind of take you on these diversions. And that can feel a little bit jarring, especially in the first book and in at least the first half of the second book. But I will say that he does a good job going back later on and pulling you along. So you're not going to be totally left in the dust. He will remind you as you are going along of things that you have kind of forgotten. And even if you don't understand everything from start to finish, that's okay. That's okay. Now, I just want to mention Deadhouse Gates. I have seen a common theme or a common narrative that people get halfway through this book and then just burn out of it and say, this was too far beyond my comprehension, or I'm just not getting it. This isn't for me. And I think after having read it and having read the next book, and I bet most people who love this series will see people who say, I burnt out halfway through the second book, and just go, you were so close. You were so close to getting some answers. You were so close to getting something to hold on to. My plea to you would be, finish the second book. If it still hasn't impacted you, maybe it is time to just move on with it. But I think it will. I think it will impact you. Now, the third book, Memories of Ice, and I'm sure you've heard this a whole bunch of times. A lot of people say you have to read the first 3 books in the series. And I think that's kind of crazy to say, but it might be sort of true. Now, Memories of Ice was the first one where I really felt like from start to finish, I understood everything that was going on. And if I didn't understand everything, I at least knew the questions that I had. Does that make sense? And that made me feel like I'm not so far behind that I'm unable to gain ground. I felt comfortable with where I was behind because I knew the right questions to ask. I think after the first 2 books, if you read the first 100 pages of the third book, I think you will feel like you are finally getting the series that you wanted to read. Finally getting the series that you signed up for. So I would say hold on. Now, it might not be for everyone, but if this seems cool, if the series seems cool as you are going through it, but you just don't understand everything, keep going. Keep going, because it will eventually bring you in, and it's a big series. I think you will be just fine. Now, there are all sorts of resources that you could use, from discussion videos to PowerPoint slides, that I wish I would have maybe used a little bit to at least gain my footing. One of these things that I would suggest to you, there are these awesome PowerPoints, and I'll put a link to that in the description here. I didn't use it the whole way through, and there's one for each of these books, but at least for the first part of the series, this PowerPoint helped to kind of develop a strong foundation to build the rest of your knowledge on. And I think if you use that and build that strong foundation, all the other blocks will be sturdy enough to get you through it and actually have you enjoy it. And that will help you really build that foundation to build upon. And it'll give you some of the core details that will help you along the way. So I hope you enjoy this and reach out to the community. They will certainly help you along the way as well.